1.1 is roll call. I'll go ahead and turn this over to the superintendent so he can do roll call, and he will have a few comments.
Mr. Lejeune?
Here.
Mr. DeZarmo? Here. Ms. LeBeau? Ms. LeBeau is absent. Mr. Lachele?
Here.
Ms. Mason? Ms. Mason said she will be here in 5 minutes, so please, Christy, if she does, just put her on in. Ms. Trahan? Here. Mr. Edmond?
Here.
Mr. Bergeron?
Here.
Mr. Hidalgo?
Here.
Board President, you have a quorum. Superintendent comments, a couple of things that I'd like to address, not only the board, but anyone else that is here. We just returned with a team of people from Phoenix, Arizona, attending the National Resource Officers Convention. And there's a couple of things that I'd like to confirm. And first of all, I want to thank this board, and I want to thank the previous boards and the previous superintendent for establishing the things that we are doing around safety. The one thing that I will tell you is that Lafayette Parish, not only here in the state of Louisiana, but Lafayette Parish as a whole in this country is far ahead of any school district when it comes to school safety. And when we talk about the amount of money that we spend on resource officers, when we talk about the amount of money we spend on fencing and limiting access, and what we are doing to make sure that every day safety is a priority in this district, we are on the right page. So I want to first of all thank you as board members, because today in some of these action items, it is going to be about safety. It is going to be about approving certain amounts of money so that we could do safe type of things to make sure that our kids are there. So again, thank you for that. And again, Lafayette Parish is in good shape. We will never, ever take this for granted. It will be a core value of ours moving forward. The second thing that I want to kind of talk to you guys about is that this agenda, and I want to apologize to the public. I want to apologize to you as board members, that this agenda and this special meeting is due to legislative acts that were not signed by the governor until the 2nd and 3rd week of June, and having a 4th of July holiday and making sure that we're getting something to where we can engage with stakeholders. Because I will tell you, and I don't want any of you to think that even in this short timeline of us having to come back to you as far as these policies, that we have not done our due diligence as far as making sure that we gathered principals and we talked to our principals about these policies. We actually sent out surveys to parents, to business people, to different people on our advisory committees to get input from them. So we did get input, even though it was on a short timeline. But again, when a governor signs all of these different legislative acts in the 3rd week of June, it is hard for this team to really sit down and try to make some sense. I want to first of all recognize our counsel, Mr. Hammonds, that was right on the side of us as far as getting a lot of this stuff taken care of and guided us, because there's a lot that's going to have to take place now, but also July 31st, there's going to be a lot of different things that will be on the agenda that I just didn't want to overwhelm you guys with today. So I say all of that is that, again, there will be some discussion about various things. Our team is here to engage. Our team will be here to do what they need to explain what we got from our stakeholders. And again, it is up to you guys to be able to approve this so that we can move forward. Mr. President, that ends my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. And just for the public's knowledge, Ms. LeBeau and Ms. Mason are here now. We do have a full board for this meeting. Our agenda today will not be the normal consent agenda type where you read them all off and we pull them. We're going to vote on each one individually, so we'll go one at a time. Let me remind each and every one of you that you have 3 minutes to speak. You may come up to the podium. Comments, it is called public comment. It is not question and answer. You may come to the podium and speak for or against an item. It is not question and answer with the board or with staff. If you need questions answered, please get with staff after the meeting or your board member after the meeting. We'll be happy to answer these questions, but we're going to go through them one at a time. 2.1 is administrations, is discussion and or action concerning the proposed code of conduct for the 2025 Student Handbook. I'll entertain a motion in a second, please.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Bergeron, seconded by Ms. Mason. That motion would be that the board approve the proposed portion of the Code of Conduct for the 2024-2025 Student Parent Handbook. With that being said, we'll open up the floor for any public comment. Hearing none from the public, I'll ask for board member comment. Why did I look at Ms. LeBou first? I went straight. Kate always has good questions. I like to go to her first. Ladies first, Ms. LeBou, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I did have a question from a principal as well as a parent this morning about the question about possession of a phone, and they were confused by possession as seen or heard. And so I just want the if you would, the administration to clarify. My understanding is, as it was when my children attended the schools, if you have the phone in your bag but it's turned off and it's never seen by the administration, not used during the school day unless given the authority, not an emergency situation as we've defined, the student will not be disciplined. It's if the student would take it out of their bag and actually turn the phone on and use it during the school day without permission and not for an acceptable use as defined under the policy. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that we're not going to have people at the front door collecting the phones, because I think that was where the confusion came in. So if y'all could just clarify that, that would be great. Thank you.
Ms. LeBou, again, that is something that we will discuss in 2.2, which is the next item. And our team will go through the specifics as far as cell phones, but this right here is just for the discipline, the code of conduct.
Yeah, the possession was defined in here. That's why I think it was this number, but that's fine. We can go through it in the next one. Thank you very much.
Any other public comment? Go ahead, sir.
Just one thing, and this is just for clarification purposes, but I had some constituents reach out about the line in the handbook. Possession of unauthorized technology, electronic devices are prohibited on campus. Just for clarification, this does not include Chromebooks that people sign off on and we hand out as part of technology.
No, sir. Chromebooks are a part of our day-to-day curriculum, and it's something that is needed for our students to be successful as far as their learning is concerned.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bergeron. Any other board comments? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote.
Nine for, none against.
Motion carries. Next item is 2.2. It's administration also. It's discussion, excuse me, and/or action concerning revisions to policy JBE, truancy, JCDAA, student smoking, tobacco use, JCDAE, student use of electronic telecommunication devices, JD discipline, JDD suspension, and JDE expulsion. I will entertain a motion and a second, please.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the revisions to policies.
Yeah, I'll second it.
We have a motion by Ms. Mason and a second by Mr. Lejeune that the board approve revisions to the policies listed below. I'll open it up for public comment. Come on up, young lady. Have a seat. I think the microphones are turned on.
Hi, great school board.
How you doing?
Nice to see you again, and all the new members. Their internal organs and possibly leads to death. Yet, we encourage and dispense on campus big pharmaceutical mind-altering psychiatric drugs. It is a disgrace to do this to our children on school grounds. These drugs harm our children's mind, brain, body, and internal organs along with their soul. Big Pharmaceutical is the biggest drug pushers of all time, yet we deliver our children's bodies to these criminals on a daily basis on school property. So, if alcohol and tobacco aren't allowed on school grounds, what are these toxic, mind-altering, detrimental, side effect-causing evil drugs doing on campus? Of course, we don't encourage our children to smoke cigarettes, drink alcohol, or do drugs, do we? Yet, we have teachers recommending SSRIs, Ritalin, Adderall, and every other dangerous drug you can imagine to our children. After reading the inserts on these medicines, these drugs, you will see that they are toxic, full of harmful ingredients, and the side effects are dangerous and criminal. These drug pushers have been sued multiple times for the suicidal and harmful effects these drugs have on our children. There is a zero drug policy on campus, right? Well, then why do we sacrifice our children to the evil and criminal drug manufacturers? It's like we say, here, child, enjoy this side effect. Enjoy this toxicity of this pill you're taking. Oh, and by the way, I hope it doesn't hurt your mind and your internal organs too much. Now swallow the pill. These toxic pills excuse me. These toxic pills, instead, teachers can suggest herbs such as St. John's wort and other healthy substances that are healthy to our children. In Jesus' name, I thank you. But we don't want our children taking these drugs on campus. The parents can give their children this medicine at home. There is no reason for schools to be medicinal dispensaries. The only drugs that should be allowed on campus, like I've told all of you before, is the EpiPen and diabetes medicine and stuff for like serious stuff. But parents can give their children drugs at home. So, I mean, we're not going to make big pharmaceutical rich, and we're not going to hurt our children. We're not going to give our children these toxic drugs because they're all legal, unfortunate, but big pharmaceutical, by design, is mind-numbing our children and hurting our children, and it's done in the school, but then you don't allow alcohol and tobacco, and they're all addictive, they're all harmful, they're all, very disruptive to our children. All you have to do is read the inserts on the big pharmaceutical drugs, and you'll know. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Ms. Reed and guest?
Yes. Julia Reed, President Lafayette Parish Association of Educators. We are in support of this item. We did wish to clarify that no teacher currently recommends any child take any drug that is outside the scope of their practice, or any educator on campus. It's not part of our job description. It's not something that would be ethical for them to do, and not something that is common practice. I just wanted that to be reflected in the record. Thank you.
Thank you. You need anybody to babysit during the meeting? You can bring them up here.
Same. I would love to hold the baby.
You all right.
Recommend drugs to my child in a Catholic school.
We don't manage Catholic schools, and no outbursts, please. Let's have a civil meeting today, ladies and gentlemen. Any other public comment? Come on up. You can come two at a time. Okay. Now, there's 2 seats. Come on up. You'll be up already. Just make sure both microphones on.
Hi, my name is Nadine Melanson. The comment is concerning the electronic use. I know we can't ask questions, but just hoping for some clarification. It brings up on a school bus, but it also says during the instructional day, and then the definition for instructional day has to do with the take-in bell and the last dismissal bell, so that's kind of confusing as to whether or not electronic devices are not allowed on a school bus. The other thing is, in an emergency, I'm hoping administration and staff gives a little leeway for especially multi-hour lockdowns. When my daughter did not have a cell phone starting in middle school, she had a major multi-hour lockdown in 6th grade and tried to frantically reach me by email and could not. And after that, I gave her a cell phone because I wanted her to be able to contact me during lockdown. So I don't know if that would be part of emergency. But that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lori Larpener. I am a teacher at Lafayette High as well as a parent of 2 at Lafayette High. I just wanted to have a little bit of clarification with the phone. First of all, thank you for everything that y'all do. Y'all are great, and I appreciate everything you do as a teacher and as a parent. I just want to see if it's like when they walk on campus from 7 to 2:30, if that's the way it's going to be? Are we going to give them 30 minutes at lunch, or is it going to be cut and dry? Because as a teacher, I think they're going to be in the bathroom a lot, on the phone, and it needs to be like the state says it, in my opinion. Like, I teach Algebra 1. It is of course, an important subject that not everybody loves. So it's very hard to keep their attention. And I am really happy that the state did this, because the kids just don't understand how much it is involved in their lives and that they just can't put it down. It's so bad. So I guess as a teacher and a parent, I would like to have a little bit more clarification. Are we just is it gonna be completely shut off from 7 to 2:30? How will coaches get, we don't like to have announcements a lot, so how will coaches get information to their players? Will they be able to email them? Is that going to be the policy? I just would like to have a little bit more of how y'all plan on letting the kids have any kind of communication throughout the day. Is that going to be clarified, or is it just going to be cut and dry? I just want to have the support. And as a parent, if that's it, then my kid doesn't have their phone from 7 to 2:30. That's it. I'm going to follow what it is. But I just think parents and teachers want to be able to, whether you're in math or PE, it doesn't matter. It's just no phone, just have some clarification on that. Thank you.
As soon as we get to staff, they'll go through all of this.
Okay.
Y'all's questions will be asked. Is there any other public comment? Hearing none, I'll go to board comment. Any board comment? Mr. Bergeron.
Some of this is probably going to be answered when we talk with staff, but Mr. Hammonds, we had a question regarding legal opinion. So what, in your opinion, does the cell phone law state with regards to instructional day, whether phones have to be off or stowed away? What does the state law dictate to us?
Well, I have the actual Act 313 in my possession. This big, heavy briefcase I carry around contains all of the 780 acts of the legislature that were passed during this session. Many of them, as the superintendent indicated, signed at the last moment. So we're kind of interpreting some of these on the fly is what I'm saying. But I want to read this language because I think it's part of the statute that's not even ever talked about. And I'm reading it directly. Ms. LeBou can look over my shoulders here to verify. It says, effective beginning with the 24-25 school year and thereafter, no student shall possess on his person an electronic telecommunication device throughout the instructional day. Now, I don't read that any other way but to say you cannot be in possession of a cell phone during the entire instructional day. This has nothing to do whether it's turned on or turned off. You can't even be in possession of it. But then this is typical legislature, because let me read the next sentence. If a student brings an electronic telecommunication device in any public elementary or secondary school building or on the grounds thereof during an instructional day, now they were already prohibited, but this says if they do it, the device shall either be turned off and stowed away for the duration of the instructional day, or prohibited from being turned on and used during the instructional day. So the first sentence says you can't have it, and the second sentence says, well, maybe you can, but it can't be turned on and should be stored away, or alternatively, it at least shouldn't be turned on. So in two sentences, they gave you three options, and that's what's led to the confusion in this area. In my opinion, the instructional day would begin pretty much whenever you're picked up and whenever you're dropped off, because you can be disciplined for an infraction at the bus stop, coming or going. And as a matter of fact, the discipline statute 17416 says clearly that a student may be disciplined for any behavior on the way to school, on the way home from school, or at school. So that would, to me, that would make that part of the day, part of the school day. Now, is there a difference between a school day and instructional day? There's no definition of either in this act, but I would take the position that anywhere in between. But then that begs the question, and this is what lawyers like to do, is they talk both sides of every issue. How could you have it turned off and properly stowed away if you can't even bring it on the bus to get to school with it? And again, I don't have great answers to these questions. These are the questions that we're trying to work our way through. I think as a practical matter, we're going to try to make sure that that students are not using those phones anytime that they're at school. Now, after the school day, we get questions all the time about band, about sports, about things like that. And even though, as you may know, band is a co-curricular activity, and oftentimes part of your grade in your classroom has to do with what you do after school. So you could make the argument that staying late for band practice is a part of your instructional day, which would mean that you could not have access to the cell phone during that part of your instructional day. Again, I'm just trying to point out that we have 1,000 questions that we're doing our best to try to interpret. I think the simplest solution is to say you can't use it while you're at school, and that if you do use it, then you're subject to disciplinary action. Even that has been problematic. You know, I have the opportunity to work with a number of school districts, and I can tell you that they will tell you without qualification that the biggest infraction that they have, disciplinary infraction they have, relates to cell phones, because they can't monitor them. You know, they can't police every child who brings a cell phone. They can't police when they go into a restroom stall and turn it on. They can't police when they're being used improperly. It's almost impossible to do. And so I think that this act, I'm going to give the authors here the benefit of the doubt that the act was to try to eliminate student usage of cell phones during the course of the school day. Now, the other thing that is not addressed here, however, is a situation, and I know it's a long answer, Mr. Bergeron, to a short question, is I had the opportunity to tour a school in North Louisiana recently, and I walked into the classroom with the superintendent, and every student there was on his cell phone. And so I waited till I got out in the hall, and I asked the superintendent, I says, what's the deal here? Every single child was on his cell phone. And the superintendent said, because we can't get the kids off the cell phones, and so we've decided to teach them on their cell phones. And so they actually present the lesson to the students through their cell phone. And every child is got the cell phone up as part of the lesson, the instruction that's going on in that classroom. Now, obviously, that wasn't addressed here either. If you're using it as an instructional tool, then I'm assuming that there's going to be some kind of an exception for that, but it doesn't say that here. This says you can't bring it on the campus. So again, we have a lot of questions that are unanswered. The staff has done their best to try to figure out how to address those in the policies that are before you for approval. And I know I didn't fully answer everyone's questions, but I wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of the full picture.
Thank you. So the way I understand it is we're pretty much taking the path of least resistance here, because we could ban cell phones on campus according to state law. We're trying to be as reasonable as possible with the legislation, right? Because we could easily say, you get on campus and you stow it away in, the pouches you can put them in that locks them away. We're trying to let the students practice self-restraint if they can first, and give them some leeway. So we're trying to tackle this in the least intrusive way as possible while still fitting within state law, right? So I just want some clarification on it. Thank you, Mr. Hammonds.
Any other board comment? Right here. I want to get this side first.
I just want to say, basically agreeing with what everybody said, this is going to be new. And when you have the largest, population of kids, it's going to take a little while to get it adjusted. But I'll be honest with you, the forward thinking of our superintendent and this board, we've been talking about this for months before it ever got voted in. So it's been coming up, and so we've slightly prepared for it, knowing that it's a possibility. But we also know, we wanted a little bit public feedback, and it's been mostly great. But I am a parent, and I do have a kid that could be locked down, and I would love to know where my kid is during lockdown. So it's a fight that I have to fight back and forth. No cell phones, or what have you. So, we're looking at all scenarios, every scenario, but ultimately the forward thinking of our superintendent, he and I met 2 months ago, and the bag idea came up right away, because he does a lot of research on other areas. So we will fix it. Just be patient with us. I know that's a bad word, patient, but we will do everything we can and take everything into consideration.
Thank you, sir. Ms. LeBeau?
Mr. Hammonds, like with contracts versus the state law. If our policies are more specific than the state law, does it supersede? Or are we allowed to define and fill in the gaps and have that supersede what the state law says?
Well, don't forget that the holy grail for school boards is revised statute 1781C. You remember, I've told you before, on you being the board, that if you ever go out to speak publicly and someone asks you, where's your authority to adopt a policy, that's the statute number. That statute provides that you can adopt any policy as a board so long as it doesn't violate a state law or a board policy. Now, you can add on, but it just cannot be in conflict with a state statute.
Okay, great. And then another question for staff. I know we use the words instructional area and instructional day, or instructional, I've seen also instructional minutes. Do we have any of those defined anywhere? And I know you asked about the bus. It says that it shouldn't be on a school bus during the regular instructional day. So again, we're going back to that, whether I think it'd be a field trip. That's how I interpret it, field trip, things like that. So if y'all could clarify that as well, just so we know whether or not we're intending to prevent them on the buses to and from, or whether the objective of the language is to do it while they're on, still during that instructional day for a field trip, et cetera.
Well, first of all, can we just maybe get everyone's, and then we'll just get the staff to address all of those different things, because I think y'all may have some different things that we need to kind of just bring to you.
Any other board comment? Mr. Hidalgo.
Last school year before, so currently, not looking forward, how bad is our cell phone issue within the school system?
Bad.
Bad. What is our current policy on cell phones in the school system?
Our current policy is that the students have been able to have it, but it still shouldn't have been seen. Some schools was adopted by a red and green zone, basically in the high schools, to where you could have them in certain areas of school, have it taken out, have it at lunch, because there was no mandate of not having it by the state at all, or not to be seen by the state. So some schools high schools operated in certain areas. Some schools followed our policy 100% as no, it couldn't be seen, visible. The discipline was it was confiscated, and then they worked through it. Confiscated, had to be picked up. The board had brought the prior board had brought the red and green zones up in the high school areas. And some schools chose to do it, and some schools chose not to do it, because there was no law that was binding us to what we could do and not do.
So our current policy says that the cell phone should be stowed away, not heard or seen. And the new policy we're proposing says the cell phone should be stowed away, not heard or seen. So we're going to do the same thing. We're not going to get a different result. The kids are not, this policy is not going to do anything to prohibit cell phone use. Furthermore, I would imagine there's a very small handful of educators who are probably going to say, okay, kids, take your cell phones out. And so, I don't want to ban cell phones altogether, but that's really the only answer if we're going to fix the problem, because if you see a cell phone, you don't have to start going through the process of, well, is it turned on? Did you use it 5 minutes ago? It's, you have the cell phone, we're taking it, period, bottom line. And, so I don't know how what we're proposing here is any different than what we're doing now. And so we're going to do the same thing, expect a different result. That's not going to happen. I just wanted to point that out. I have children. I've got a daughter in high school. She's in the color guard. They use the app all day, every day. It's arguably, it would be a major change. My biggest issue with the cell phone is what was alluded to earlier, is that it's an addiction. They just can't get away from it. That's my biggest issue. But I'm not an educator, so there are many more issues, and we're not going to solve it by changing the policy to do the same thing that the current policy already does.
Thank you. Ms. Mason?
As a mom, I'm very thankful that the state legislature took this on, even though, as Mr. Hammonds has pointed out, it's not perfect. It has a second clause. It's a little bit murky, but I'm very thankful for our superintendent and our staff for figuring out the best way to implement the state law. I do think that it will make a difference. I think that now that we have the state legislature to back us up on taking away cell phones is huge. Before, it was gray. It was like, is it their right to own this property? The parents saying, no, I need to get in touch with my kid. You know, as a mom, I do want to be able to get in touch with my kid, but I also do, we as a community need to be able to trust our schools and our principals and our teachers to enforce the best way to educate our kids, and that is without the cell phones in the classroom or in the hallway, and truly even on the bus. You know, my last term, we had so many issues that if a cell phone was not there, it would have never been an issue. Or it would have been documented on our cameras in our hallways and on our buses. So these problems, especially in middle school, these kids just have access to the world, and we can't control it. And I feel like this is it's a great move by our state to help our teachers teach and take the distractions away. And I do think it will change, because I know that this superintendent is very serious about improving our education, and he will enforce every single time they take away that cell phone or see the cell phone where it's not supposed to be. So I have a lot of faith in Mr. Francis here, and I know it's going to be a big task to take on, but we need our public to support this in our schools as well, and we don't need cell phones at school. Thank you.
Any other public board comment? Mr. Lejeune.
Yes, sir. All right, I'm gonna agree with Ms. Mason on this. Coming from a former administrator and a former educator, cell phones were an issue. The thing about it is we can have any rule in place, and it just has to be simplistic, because if it has gray area in it, there's going to be a loophole. Kids, parents are going to find it. And any other rule that we have on campus is only as good as the administration and the teachers. You know, if it's enforced everywhere on campus, the kids will conform. You know, they will conform, especially in the classroom and walk in the halls if the administrators are present and the outcomes of the discipline are enforced, kids will conform.
One more time, Ms. LeBou.
Just when the staff is explaining, can you also address whether or not we're going to have adequate signage and things that will alert the kids to the change in the rule, the enforcement, and the discipline policy? Because I feel like we really we need to have visible signs so that the teachers are not the only ones giving them this information, that when they walk in that building, they know exactly what they have to do, and they know exactly what the discipline issue response is going to be. And, you know, I just want to make sure that we're going to have that so that we can help the administration and the faculty and staff as much as possible when they're having to enforce this issue. And, you know, also have it available to parents at orientation, parent night, all that stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. LeBou. Any other board comment? Ms. Trahan.
I support this state law. The one thing I would say for our district is that we provide proper communication to the parents, the students, because this is going to be a big change for them. And so we don't want to have even more problems at the beginning of the academic year or throughout the year because we haven't communicated exactly what the policy dictates. So there's no gray areas and no one is misinformed or understand. So that's my comment.
Any other board comment?
Right here.
Go ahead, Mr. Lejeune.
Parents and students are given a handbook, right? All of this is in the handbook.
It will be.
So there's their communication right there.
And,
you know?
and we'll go through some things that we have planned.
Yes, sir. So that they know when they walk on campus what the expectations are, you know, and if they don't, give them a handbook and let them read it, and so they can get it straight before they walk on campus that first day.
Thank you, Mr. Lejeune. Mr. Edmond?
I'm in support of this as well. Many times I went to LaRosier School and talked to some of the kids over at LaRosier at the alternative school, and a lot of the disciplinary actions came by results of cell phone usage and cell phone from the social media aspect was going on campus. So this right here hopefully would deter some of the discipline problems as well in the schools.
Thank you, sir. I will go to staff, but I would like to ask staff, and the community to maybe look at policy BSB-1. That was Brenton Sanders telling Brock that if he got caught using a cell phone in school, it was mine at the end of the year. Leave it in your truck, leave it at home. Ladies and gentlemen, in 3 years of high school, we had 0 issues with our child. I guess that's a roundabout way of saying it starts at home. If the parents put their foot down at home, it's going to make the job for administrators and teachers a lot easier, because I never relied on the school system to raise my child. I did that myself, and that policy was never broken. So with that, I'll turn it over to the staff, and I'm sure they'll go over the policies today.
So thank you, board members, members of the public. First, let me start by saying, and I say this to each and every one of you as a board member, is that it will start with me, and it will start with the staff that is in attendance today. We've had many discussions about just what Mr. Hammond stated, that the law says one thing and then it says something completely different. I want you to know that this puts us in a very difficult situation as a staff that brings something to you as the board. And I will tell you, we've heard both sides. We've heard the side of they shouldn't bring them at all. They should have them here. And we have engaged in lots of conversations around this. I will tell you, it is going to be different. And the difference is going to be is that we will take away the cell phone and they will not get it back until the end of the day or by a parent or whatever. I guarantee you we were not doing that before. We have specifically stated that first offense, this happens, second offense, this happens, third offense, this happens. You are going to get your cell phone taken away and you're not getting it back, and your parents are going to pick it up for if you want that cell phone back. So that is not what we don't have that in our old policy. This is what we're going to be proposing to you that we will go over. Again, this thing about instructional day. How do we define the instructional day? You have to understand that we have bus drivers. We have people that are in situations to where even if we say, hey, no cell phones on the bus, think about the bus driver that has 70 kids on that bus. They're trying to keep behavior under control. How are you going to find out a kid that's under the seat with a cell phone? It's going to be somewhat, and we looked at that. We looked at it, hey, how do we make this consistent, whether it be elementary, middle, and high? Our team is going to go over that with you. But I will tell you, it will start with me. It will start with the individuals that are in the audience, and we will enforce it. And you know how you're going to know that? You're going to get the phone calls. You will get the phone calls, and all I will say to you is that it is state law, and we will follow state law. And that is what we're going to kind of always lean back on to make sure that is there. I want to turn it over to Dr. Rabelais. He's going to talk to you guys about what he has done with engaging people and making sure that we get to a point where we're defining instructional day and we are getting very specific about what happens on the first, second, and third offense.
Hello, board. So to start with, I think one of the biggest things about this law was defining that instructional day. So when you look in the policy, the instructional day shall begin at the time students arrive on campus prior to the take-in bell and conclude upon the last dismissal bell at the end of the day. So what we did was we tried to get with our high school principals. We tried to get feedback from our administrators about how do we define that instructional day, because y'all, the name of the game is consistency. If we don't use this state law to empower our educators and our administrators, where we get lost in previous efforts to enforce this policy is a lack of consistency and in some of that gray area that you all have mentioned. So for us and for the educators and administrators, it was really, really important, and teachers especially, because they need to know we have their back. It is so important that we are consistent in the definition of that day. So to us, the best place that we felt we could be consistent and fair in application of this policy and discipline was we have single point entry and we have weapons detections. So we are really fortified in our schools. So we have great control of kids coming in and going out of our schools. Upon entry of our schools, phones should be put away. to answer the question from earlier from Ms. LeBou, we're not going to go and start just snatching them and throw them in a bucket and have a big closet. We're not doing that. The understanding is when I go through that weapons detection, I'm coming in school, the coaching point for our schools is phones should be put away. They're going through weapons detections anyway with book sacks and music instruments and all of the other things. That is going to be the coaching for our principals and our schools when they start to enter the school. From that time all the way till that last bell rings, the last period of the day, no phones should be out on campus. And so that includes classrooms, and we do have to commit on both sides. So no longer can we say it's an instructional tool, right? We got to be consistent. So our allegiance on both sides is it is out of sight. It is not seen or heard or used from the time they enter school to the time that last bell rings. That also includes lunch. There was debate and there was conversations around some of the transitions times and transitional times and kind of the free times. But again, y'all, the second we start to let up on what is defining the instructional day, then we got to rein it back in. And so we tried to have as many conversations as we could about that. And it was really I guess the best place where we feel we could all commit as administrators, teachers, educators, that if we say it's put up from the time they end to the last bell, then we can all agree to be consistent to that message and stay on to that point. The other things I've kind of heard some of you guys had mentioned, things like crisis. You know, it's really important that when we talk about crisis, that is still like in a lockdown. Safety is paramount. We don't want them to be on phones. We don't want them to be having conversations or having big, long things. However, just like the second that lockdown is lifted, we're not going and writing up dress code. We will have to have some common sense approaches to how we handle our response after kids are lifted up from a lockdown or from a crisis type of situation. And it's gonna be new for us too, and how we handle those situations. And communication. We know communication and onboarding is going to be a huge part of all this. So if you guys decide to go with this policy or however you decide to proceed, we will get with the communications teams. We will do mass push outs to parents, educators, in any way, shape, or form that we can. Also, the beautiful thing about the calendar y'all adopted, we have staggered start days. Those are going to be great educational times for our kids in smaller groups with our principals to go through exactly these expectations we're rolling out so that we are 100% sure, whole school, whole faculty, whole staff, about how we want to proceed in monitoring and accountability of the policy.
So let me emphasize what Dr. Robbie just stated, is that on that Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday when there are staggered starts for kids to come to school, it has been mandated by our staff to our principals that they sit down with each of those groups of students and go through these expectations. And they have 3 days to be able to do that with different groups. When it comes down to Monday, when we have everybody on that campus, we're enforcing everything that is being put out. Also, our communication team is here, and our communication team is ready. As soon as this board approves this, we're pushing something. As soon as you push it, they have a press release that's going, and I hear you loud and clear. We're going to get something to every school as far as signage, just like we have to do with firearms. We will get this on every campus, and we will continue with that communication team. As soon as we get closer to school, we will start pushing things out to where we can make sure that it's clear that this is what the board and this is what Lafayette Parish is standing for moving forward. Again, it starts with me. And I assure each and every one of you that I'm going to make sure our staff, because I'm going to be visible and I'm going to be on those campuses, they will have to adhere to what you guys pass as far as that policy is concerned. And it will be different, Mr. Hidalgo. It will specify, and they will be suspended. Their phones will be taken away. And when that kid does not get that phone back and their parent has to come and get it, it may be a day, it may be 2 days. Ask your kid if you take that phone away for a day or 2 days, what happens to them? They go crazy. Thank you.
Ms. Mason?
Sorry, I forgot to ask this earlier. Maybe Ms. Robley can address. So we have mesh and clear backpacks. So you can see, that's to prevent weapons being on campus. That's, anything you don't want on campus. So with the cell phones being visible, possibly through a backpack, you know, with the book sacks, with the masher, the clear. Do you have any thoughts? Did y'all address that yet?
I mean,
Sorry,
we
no,
have,
it's
no,
new.
ma'am, we haven't flushed that out entirely. I mean, it's a great question. We know that question, just, you know, we talked about it too. It may be showing out of a pocket or something like that. Again, I think it's important for us to be on the same page that when we say out of sight, that we mean it's completely out of sight. So I don't have a response to that yet, other than we're going to continue to have to weigh with our administrators about norming that expectation as when this comes in and we say out of sight, this is what we mean. But again, that I think as the student and the parent need to make every effort to keep it stowed away and out of sight, so that we don't put in that place constantly to make that judgment call, would be the best thing that I guess I could say off of that.
Ms. LeBeau?
Thank you, Mr. President. Ms. Mason, I'm glad you brought that up. That was the two, and I don't know if I need to make an alternate motion, but that would be my preference, is to include in this policy the definition of the instructional day, because let's be honest, if people have to hunt and peck for definitions, they're not going to have them, and I want that to be clearly spelled out, because we use that term, you know, multiple times in here. So I'd really like that definition to be included in the policy, as well as the fact that stowed away would mean if it's in a you know, backpack or duffel or whatever they're bringing on campus. We need to clarify what stowed away means. Not in your pocket, not on your person, but if it's in a, you know, a bag or something that you're bringing on campus, that you're not gonna take it out of that includes stowed away. So I just think we need to be as clear as possible, because again, those gray areas are where we're gonna get into trouble. And I think if people don't understand instructional day and they don't understand what stowed away means, then those are our first two hurdles that are going to come up.
Ms. Abeth is defined in the last sentence of the policy, instructional day.
I apologize, y'all. I was reading the other discipline. I'm sorry.
Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote.
Nine for, none against.
Motion carries. Next item is 2.3 is facilities. Discussion and our action to use COVID contingency to fund new account Superintendent Small's projects under $75,000 within the Capital Improvement Fund. I'll entertain a motion in a second.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Motion made by Mr. Bergeron, seconded by Ms. Mason. Any public comment? Any board member comment?
I got some. I just wanted some clarification. So, Mr. Touche, I just want to clarify, this fund is going to be used, it's a one-time funding that we're doing this kind. It's not going to be a recurring fund, correct? Just to clarify for the public.
Yeah, Mr. Bergeron, first of all, you remember that the previous board established a school safety account. And a lot of different things that we actually did to get to a point where we are right now for being safe schools is nothing but establishing this, that is going to be an account to where you have one-time monies that we can spend this year. And that money is not spent, then the money goes back into general fund. But it will be something of which we will look, and I ask each of you to look at what's going on at your campuses and seeing if there's some needs around safety, some things that we can really try to get our schools to be more safe. It's also a way of which, if there's something that, you know, we need to do to be able to improve the instructional day and doing different things like that. it's something where you're doing right now to be able to help us to get to that point from this particular point to the end of the year.
And I just want to make sure, like, I know you give us regular updates about some of these small projects going on, paintings, we got an elevator replacement going on at Lafayette Middle, things like that. Can we continue to be updated in that manner for these projects?
Absolutely.
Any other board comment? Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote.
Nine for, none against.
Motion carries. Next item is 2.4, facilities. Discussion and action to award the new Lafayette Parish School Board Lawn Services contract to the official winner of the June 20th, 24 RFP number 15-25 bid proposal. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Ms. Mason, second by Mr. DeZarmo. Any public comment? Any board member comment?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Edmond?
I would like to get clarification on the scope of work for the proposed contract winner. Is it gonna be just cut, weeding, and blow, bed maintenance, or trimming of small trees? Just for clarification.
Mr. Fondo?
Mr. Fondo? Yeah, it looks like the mic's on.
So it's cut, trim, and blow off surfaces. The poisoning is not in it. Cutting of small trees is not in it. We're going to handle that on an as-needed basis. There is add-on costs that are in the contract that we can add on to the contract with the company that is winning gets awarded the bid. But the main scope of work is the grounds of cutting, trimming, and blowing off the surfaces, picking up trash as well.
Is there any verbiage in the contract to state that if the proposed bid winner is not following up to the duties of the scope of work, would there be some type of verbiage?
Yes, there is some exit clauses actually for both parties. Yes, sir.
That's all I need. Thank you.
Ms. Mason?
I would just like to comment that I'm very thankful for the superintendent and his staff for taking on this new way of taking care of our grounds. I have been asking for this since I got on this board originally in 2019, and I really truly believe that our janitors need to concentrate on the inside of our schools and not spending all day cutting grass on our campuses. Our teachers depend on them, our children depend on them, our principals, our janitors are truly like our heroes of our school. So I really appreciate y'all tackling the constant grass cutting of our schools in this way. So thank you.
Mr. Hidalgo?
Sorry.
You mentioned that there was some opportunity in the contract or the potential contract for add-on costs. What would that be for?
Well, if they're in the bid, there was a hourly cost for add-ons of, for example, tree pruning. So that was part of the company's bids of we wanted them to prune the trees in front of Karen Crowe High School. There's an hourly cost on that. That was part of the RFP. Also, there was an add-on cost for additional campuses. So the RFP was based on a certain amount of schools. And if we would like to add additional campuses, we got an upfront cost of per square foot for those campuses to be added to see if we could fit them within our budget.
So, and this may not be directed toward you. The superintendent and I, we spoke about this. I just wanted to first commend the process. With all due respect to the staff that we have, it's a lot to take care of. Our schools are on large tracts of land. It's very tough, and it's very disheartening to pass by any school, but certainly in your own district, in the middle of a community, and have knee-high grass, right? So this is a great step forward. I do have some concerns, and I just want to state them publicly. I looked at all the bids, and the gap, the range of costs alarmed me. And, I've watched other communities in the past play what's called a change order game, where you go through a big old RFP process, the lowest bid wins, and the lowest bid is never the reality. It's changed order to death, and then the next thing you know, it's back up. And I do want to say that, you know, I don't know many of these companies, but I see two on the list that are big dogs in this community. And, you know, it's like, wow, how could there be such a difference in price? You know, this is not like a mom and pop shop. These are two large, the biggest companies around, of the biggest. So I'm just concerned about the change order game. And I just want to be sure, because, you know, we're approving this amount, you know, which is in our budget. And, you know, if the 330 ends up being 850, well, that's not what we voted for, right? And so I'm concerned about that.
So, Mr. Hidalgo, first of all, and I know exactly where you're going with this, and I'll just say to you, and the staff is hearing me, is that we brought this to you as a cost savings, and we're going to stick to what this amount is. If there's any additional schools that need to be put on this, listen, I don't care what the contract says. I'm bringing it back to you. Because believe it or not, who's to say that those other schools, that someone else will not have a better price? So all I'm going to say is that we're going to stick to this, and if there is going to be some things that we have to do, it's going to be outside of where we're pulling this money from. So again, just be assured that I'm like you. I'm kind of shocked that what we have here to take care of all of these campuses, I want to see it. And here's the thing, another thing to the staff. I want a meeting with that person, because I want him to know the expectations from this board, and they need to understand what we're going to be holding them to. So they supposedly do a lot of UL stuff. They supposedly are big wigs in Lafayette Parish. We'll see whether or not they have the manpower and the equipment to be able to make sure that they are taking care of our schools. They will take care of our schools if we're signing this contract. So let's get that meeting together, guys, and I want to make sure that they're clear on what our board's expectations are.
Any other board comment? Ms. LeBeau, I can see out the corner of my eye.
We don't have the contract attached here, but is there a, some type of clause that allows us to terminate or put them on notice of opportunity to cure if we find deficiencies and defects in their work and those types of issues? Do we have any ways to protect ourselves and enforce?
We do. We can get out of it. Yes, ma'am.
Great, thank you.
Quickly, too.
Good, 30 days?
I think it's less, actually.
Great.
I'm not specific, but it's quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have to still approve.
Yeah. So we will get the contract before us, or it'll
Yeah.
go through? Okay.
The meeting is pre-set up for next week, so
Wonderful.
quickly.
Okay,
Mr.
great.
Lejeune?
Yes, sir, Coach. How were the 17 sites chosen?
Well, it was based on lack of staff at the time. That was before that was all pre-assigned. That's all been moved around custodial staff. But at the time, it was based on that to give us I guess a measuring stick to how do we start this process. So that's how it was determined.
Okay. And the equipment that they have on campus right now, if it's better equipment, they're all going to swap out with the schools that are still cutting?
Yes, sir. We hadn't addressed that part of it yet, but that's also part of the savings that we talked about, but hasn't even been shown in some of the stuff that you have in front of you. So there's actually more potential savings to our district based on equipment use, fuel, getting schools that are going to take care of their campuses still by grass by getting them better equipment. So those are all things that are factored into this moving forward. This
And
as
can
well.
other sites opt in if needed?
That'll be determined by Mr. Touchette and then you guys too. The contract has the ability, and the company has the ability, from what I was told by them, to add schools very quickly. And it's a matter of them getting equipment. They feel very confident. In fact, the comments from them were, when we were asking some of these questions, were any school system that they have started this with usually does like us. They start in a section. They start with a small group, or maybe they were ordered only one zone. The majority, if not all of the school districts that they start cutting with, within 12 months, they usually end up cutting it all because of they felt confident in their ability to add schools and their ability to take care of grounds.
Okay. Thank you.
But Mr. Lejeune, we will make sure that if anything goes outside of this scope, we will bring it back to you so that you guys can make a decision moving forward. Another thing, just for clarity, is that these monies, is because of the vacancies that we are not filling within the budget. So we have 30 different janitorial position openings, and let's just say that $50,000 is allocated for each of those different members. That is where we're pulling that money. It is part of our budget that we're just reallocating, but most importantly, look to the right about the amount of money we are saving, which is $250,000 just going with this particular person if we are sticking to that 330 that they're saying that they can do it for. So in those allocated positions, we are saving that type of money. So that the team put together that to make sure that you guys were clear that, number one, it's in our budget already. All we're doing is reallocating that, but we're also saving $250,000.
And
It's in general fund.
And just to help, I guess, reiterate your point, Ms. Touchette, the savings thing that you see was actually only based off of one person per site. So it actually could be even more, and with getting more done better, I guess, if we expand the service, if it's able to expand it, the savings could also increase with the expansion of, at the same time, doing more work, so.
Thank you, Mr. Fontenot. Mr. Bergeron?
I just want to say I'm glad to see Lafayette Middle on that list because we've had some back and forth, especially with my city council members about the grass there. So I'm glad to see it. I mean, I would like to entertain if we can find some money to do some brush clearing, some bush maintenance there because I've had
It's underway right now, actually. So
azalea bushes.
Yeah, it's actually Mrs. Touchette has had a big push for grounds beautification, also safety with trees falling on buildings. So here, if you've noticed some of the schools, Ms. Mason and I walked around Woodville, there's been a huge push. Funds are being spent to beautify our campuses, get rid of clutter, actually get rid of trees that are going to fall on or possibly fall on buildings. That could also affect our insurance deductibles too. So Ms. Touchette has been pretty clear on that directive, and we're hitting it as hard as we can in the maintenance department to clean up our campuses a little bit.
Appreciate it.
Mr. President.
Ms. LeBeau?
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you. I was going to ask about Woodville. I know we had recently a tree fall right there. So thank you, Ms. Mason and the department for getting together and looking at those issues. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Yes, there's been an incredible, I'm sorry, Mr. President, may I speak? There's been an incredible transformation at Woodville. We've had several dead trees that have finally been removed, and it looks like a great school, so thank you.
Madam Secretary, I'll call.
Mr. President.
Oh, what we got?
Cut me some slack here.
You do know Robert's rules stated board members to speak one time per
No, that
agenda
is
item.
inaccurate. I think you should break out your book. I think you should break out your Robert's
You're
Rule
the one
book.
I need to enforce that on.
Yeah.
Mr.
Mr. Superintendent, just
Go ahead.
clarification on something. You mentioned that the savings is coming from positions that we're not filling, but I think what I've heard from you quite a bit in the past is positions that we can't fill. It's not that we're not filling them.
Yeah.
It's that we can't fill them.
Yeah, we can't fill them even with the salary increases that you guys have put in place. I mean, it's hard, and it's something of which we're not going to stop, and it's something that we need to continue to pursue because we want to try to get people in these positions, but we're just not being very successful right now.
Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote. Is that okay with you, Mr. Hidalgo? Thank you.
Nine for, none against.
Motion carries. Next item is 2.5, Finance. Discussion and our action concerning authorization to negotiate the purchase of property on Domingue Road adjacent to Acadiana High School. I'll accept a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Second. Second.
Second it.
Made by Mr. Bergeron and seconded by Ms. Mason ahead of the other two. Thank y'all. And the motion is that the board authorize the superintendent and or his designee to enter into the negotiations for the purchase of property on Domain Road adjacent to Acadiana High School, subject to final board approval. Any public comment? Any board comment? Mr. Lejeune?
Yes, sir. This would really benefit the school, because right now you have one way in and one way out, and you have no other option. But this way, it would give us in the future, it would give us an opportunity to have an entrance and an exit going out to Domain Road. We already own all of the property up until that apartment complex behind the stadium. So this would just give us a little more peace to exit Domain Road, which is the major road behind the school. So it would benefit, especially football games, parent pickup after school. You know, this would help us tremendously. So that's kind of why we're looking to purchase it.
Could y'all put the link up on the screen that shows the property? Ms. LeBou, you had a question?
Yeah, just for clarification, that was my question. So I know we own the property behind the stadium, but the property, I guess, is that a car lane?
What did you need up on the screen?
Yeah, can you put it up?
The attachment that's, excuse me, Ms. LeBou, the attachment that is attached to the agenda item is the map of the property. Go ahead, Ms. LeBou.
I guess my question was, do we own all the way to the tree line behind the stadium, or we own only up into that, it looks like a road or a pathway? Do we need to get a right of way, I guess is my question, on that other piece of property in order to get access to Domain Avenue, or do we already own enough to get to the piece of property that we're purchasing? Which I'm in favor of.
We own all that, from Rue Iberville, all that big wooded area, all the way.
Awesome.
Yep, we
And
own
would it-
all of that, all the way to the stadium. That's actually the band practice field. It's actually a farm now. We have cows on campus.
Yeah, okay, great. I just wanted to make sure that I understood that we didn't need to get a right of way from anybody in the intermediary area over there. Thank you.
All right, any other board comments?
Me here.
Ms. Mason?
I just wanted to say that I agree with Mr. Lejeune. This is great to have an exit, and satisfies, our peer of safe schools and being able to get off of campus one way or the other. And also great for a football game or a soccer game.
Stick with football. Any other board comments? Madam Secretary, I'll call for the vote. No, my son actually played soccer. That's actually the soccer practice. Maybe that's enough property, Mr. Lejeune. I mean, you can get on parking spot now?
No, I think so. I think so.
Revote?
Nine for, none against.
Motion carries. The final item on today's agenda is 2.6, is discussion and action to use COVID contingency funds for painting, remodeling, and renovation projects at multiple schools within the self-funded construction fund. I'll entertain a motion in a second.
Motion. I'll make motion.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Bergeron, second by Mr. DeZarmo. Any public comment?
Yes, sir.
And the motion is that the board approve a revision to the self-funded construction fund utilizing COVID construction funds for multiple school painting, remodeling, renovation projects in the amount of $383,000 as attached in the public file section below. That is the motion. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I wanted to say really quick, last one that Lafayette High is looking really good. I think it's really looking really good. But the COVID contingency, you know how I always come and I talk to you? And I've told the old school board members that I don't like federal government money in our school. So I'm wondering if this COVID contingency funds is from the federal government, because it's a Hegelian dialect and they create a problem, then there's a reaction and there's a solution. So if we would keep our federal government tax money that we send to the federal government because they hurt us really bad, if we could keep it here in our community, just state taxes, and the federal government money goes to our state and to our local schools, that would be better, because the government really hurts us. They make bioweapons in a lab, and they all fund the CDC, and so they create these bioweapons. So we had this terrible thing, COVID, and now they're throwing money at us. And and they hurt us really, really bad. So I just don't like the federal government money, and I would like to keep our taxpayer money here that we send to the federal government because they hurt us. They vote all day long to hurt us and our children. And I tell the council members all the time when I go to the school board meetings, but I'm glad we're fixing everything, and I'm glad our schools are going to look beautiful, but it's just a shame that that kind of money is being used to help us when the federal government shouldn't have hurt us to begin with the whole COVID scam and debacle and all the heartache and hardships it's caused everybody. It's a disgrace. So I'm totally anti-federal government. I love our community, and we're the Bible Belt, and we're biblical, good people. And I don't like sending any of our tax money to the federal government, because with it comes strings, and not good strings for our children. And so they withhold funds, and then they create all these problems, and then they throw money at us, and then we have to bow to them and do what they say. And so state rights are more important than federal government rights. So I'm very happy that everything's being fixed and everything's going to look nice. But I just, if any federal government money that we don't have to spend in this community, I would really like that. Thank you. God bless y'all.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Any board comment? Mr. DeZarmo.
Just to clarify, that money has already been given to us, right? We're just reallocating.
Correct.
And it's not federal.
Not federal.
No, and either way, it's already allocated.
Yeah.
I just want to clear that up.
I'll clarify what the COVID contingency fund is. Things got really expensive during COVID, and inflation rates were going crazy, so a fund was created in case we had overtures on construction projects. So it was a fiscally responsible maneuver of general fund money. It wasn't federal ESSER funds.
I just wanted to make sure it wasn't money we were applying for. It's money that we already have.
I'll remind the board, this is not a back and forth, one person at a time. Mr. Hidalgo, would you like to speak?
That was a good reminder, thank you. Well, first of all, I don't think the federal government has money. That's our tax money, even if it did come from the federal government. But what I really wanted to say was I wanted to applaud my friends over there in District 1 and in that area, because, we're sure seeing a whole lot of Acadiana High on the list lately, and, it's well due, overdue. But mainly, I wanted to address, we heard a lot about Southside High and the coffee shop and all these wonderful areas, and I'm very pleased to see that we will be repainting the coffee shop and the Nike store at Acadiana High School. So it's congratulations.
I'm not sure if you're aware, but Acadiana High is a business academy, and this will be 2 operations that will be run by students as part of the business academy and learning business. So what we're doing, instead of just sitting down and sipping on coffee, we're actually going to educate. Thank you.
I think that's great. That's why I was congratulating you guys. A wonderful, wonderful opportunity.
Mr. Lejeune, I know you want to turn.
And I appreciate that. We're just trying to catch up with everybody else. Change is slow in Scott, Louisiana, so we're slowly catching up. So I do appreciate that, though, Mr. Hidalgo.
We have to have fun, ladies and gentlemen. This is actually good-hearted fun between board members. Any other board comment? Ms. LeBeau, I was not going to end this meeting without calling on you.
If we do find any additional savings, whether it's through the lawn contract or this COVID fund, if we come under budget, could we please buy Mr. Hammonds a laptop so he doesn't have to carry around the brick of legislative acts in his thing? I know he's walking kind of crooked these days, so just want to ask if we find that we could do that. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll make that an item and for the next meeting. Any other board comment? And I do invite all of you to come buy a cup of coffee. Madam Secretary, I'll call the vote. And Mr. Lejeune, if you don't mind, I would think if we could have an agreement between the 2 of us that we actually wear our Nike shirts next meeting.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
And I will buy the first cup of coffee for everybody.
Thank you. Because I will share a funny story with y'all. Mr. Lejeune called me. They had the administrative whatever they're having next week. They had it Southside years ago. And when Mr. Lejeune would call me, if he said, "Britt, how you doing?" we were talking football. If he said, "Mr. Lachele," as his board member, here he comes. He said, "I'm about to lose my mind. I'm at Southside High School, and they have a coffee shop." So next time I go to Acadiana and see him, he said, Britt, I'd like to show you my coffee shop. It was a Mr. Coffee about this big in the assistant principal's office, and he asked if I'd like a cup of coffee. Thank you, Mr. Hidalgo. Has everybody voted?
9 for, none against.
The motion carries. Ladies and gentlemen, those are all of our agenda items for today. I wish you a great Friday and a wonderful weekend. This meeting is adjourned.